Thank you, Chairman. Gentlemen, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Question one. I'm going to go back and review some revenue estimates. Well, it's not exact science. By January 2017, actual revenues were going to end the fiscal year short of the official estimate. Roughly, it was about $416.8 million. Can you kind of review what changed in the first 7 months of the fiscal year in 2017, 18, causing the revenue shortfalls?
For this year or last year?
It was last year, yeah, 2017.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I would characterize that last year, it was very broad weakness across our big three revenue sources: sales, personal income, and corporate net income. Really a confluence of events. What we're finding out now from the latest tax data is that capital gains actually fell last year, dividend payments actually fell last year, and we don't see that until the tax return data come in. And we think some of that was due to the election, that people deferred capital gains in anticipation of a tax cut. Sales tax was weak as well. The year prior to that, sales tax grew by 3%. Last year, it only grew by 1%. So for some reason, people weren't spending the income that they were receiving. And finally, on the corporate side, we had a very unusual occurrence where we had 2 consecutive years of negative profit growth, and that hasn't happened in decades outside of a recession.
Okay. And then after your mid-year update, published January 25th, 2017, you assumed revenue would continue to decline by $716 million. The governor presented the executive budget 2 weeks later, February 7th. He anticipated revenues would end the fiscal year short by only $374. Basically, he was saying they would exceed the revenue estimate for the next few months. On June 30th, when the fiscal year ended, actual collections were short by $1.1 billion. It kind of showed the governor's false assumption on revenue collections, creating the proposed 17-18 budget. At what point should there be a correction within the governor's office to updating those revenue analysis and at least starting to put some money back into budgetary reserve? Should be done immediately, or?
Oh, I can't speak for them when it should be done. I can say for my office, we were seeing the weakness right out of the gate, really. And as you noted, we did pull down our mid-year estimate by about $450 million, and then again in May by $200, and then the loss of the transfer at the very end of another $200.
Okay. Let's go back in time a little bit further. Governor Wolf's proposed budget 2015-16 proposed $4.56 billion tax increase. Ironically, had that taken place, his revenue estimate at the time was $35.86 billion. Revenue estimate for this current fiscal year is $33.61 billion based on his proposed budget. It's a difference of about $2.26 billion. Had that tax been enacted, do you feel we would have had a stronger economy or a weaker economy?
I think that's unclear because it depends on how the money would be spent. And I can't say one way or the other whether it would be
money into
higher.
the tax revenue coming into the state, how it was spent by the state?
Correct. So the money taken out of the state will have a certain multiplier associated with it, and then it comes into the state and it is spent, and that will have a certain multiplier associated with it too. So we would have to know how the monies were spent so we could make the comparison.
Okay. Fair enough. You've done extensive work on the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act as well as the minimum wage increase. Based on your two analysis, what will put Pennsylvania in a better economic standing moving forward? The governor's proposed minimum wage increase or the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act?
Well, I think on that, it will depend on the metrics that one is using, and there are several metrics that could be used for that purpose to decide which one is better or worse than the other. So
I mean, going through your minimum wage estimate, we have direct loss of jobs associated with it. Are there any loss of jobs associated with the federal tax cuts?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. We have increased money going back to Pennsylvania residents with the tax cuts, all basically demographic, income demographic is going to see more money, more expenditures in their pockets. With the minimum wage, you're really looking at a finer portion, correct?
It would affect a smaller portion of the population receiving the income increase.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good.